The transport ship dropped through the clouds like a stone. Inside, 24 cadets from different species sat in silence. They wore the same gray uniforms, but that was where the similarities ended. Some had scales, others had fur, and a few glowed faintly in the dim light. The humans sat together near the back, their faces showing a mix of nervousness and determination. Ji-ho Kim looked out the window at the island below. It was covered in green forests and surrounded by blue water. It looked peaceful, almost beautiful. He knew better. This was Theta 7, the testing ground where cadets either proved themselves or failed out of the Galactic Military Academy. "Listen up," Commander Thexal's voice crackled through the speakers. The Velkari instructor had a voice like grinding rocks. "You have 7 days. Survive on your rations. Follow the rules. No fires except for emergencies. No outside help. We will be watching." The ship landed hard on the beach. Sand sprayed everywhere as the door opened. The cadets grabbed their packs and filed out into the heat. Each pack contained the same things: 2 nutrient bars per day, a water purifier, a basic first aid kit, and a small tent. That was all. Ji-ho adjusted his pack and looked around. His friend Minho stood beside him, already sweating. Minho was built like an athlete, all muscle and confidence. 7 days of those disgusting nutrient bars? Minho muttered. "I'm going to lose my mind." "Could be worse," Ji-ho replied with a small smile. Nearby, Yoonji was organizing her gear with military precision. She was the kind of person who followed every rule perfectly. Her tent was already halfway set up while others were still figuring out which end was up. "We should establish a perimeter," she announced to no one in particular, "and set up a rotation for water collection." The alien cadets moved in small groups. Rickson, a Velkari with dark green scales, sneered at the humans as he walked past. "Try not to die out here, softskins," he said. His species believed that only through suffering could true warriors be made. Grand, a massive insectoid thurak, was struggling with his tent. His 6 arms should have made it easier, but he seemed confused by the simple design. The crystalline lumineth named Polara stood apart from everyone, her body catching the sunlight and throwing rainbow patterns across the sand. Hyun, the youngest human in the group, looked like he might cry. He was barely 20 years old, and had never been away from Earth before joining the academy. "I miss home already," he said quietly. "It's only a week," Suri told him. She was practical and quick thinking, already scouting the tree line for useful resources. "We'll be fine." The first day passed slowly. The cadets set up their camps, found the freshwater stream that cut through the island, and ate their first nutrient bars. The bars were gray, tasteless, and had the texture of cardboard. They provided everything the body needed to survive, but nothing the soul wanted. By evening, everyone was hungry despite having eaten. The nutrient bars filled the stomach but left a person wanting more. It was a special kind of torture. Ji-ho sat near the water that night watching the sun go down. While the others complained about the food, he was thinking about something else. He had noticed the fish jumping in the stream. He had seen fruit hanging from trees in the forest. There were birds calling from the branches, and the forest floor was covered with mushrooms and edible plants. The island wasn't a prison. It was a restaurant. He said nothing to the others, not yet. Instead, he ate his nutrient bar in silence and made mental notes. Day 2 began with rain. Cold, miserable rain that soaked through everything. The cadets huddled in their tents trying to stay dry. Morale dropped fast. Rickson complained loudly about the weather. Grand's tent had collapsed in the night, and he sat in the mud looking defeated. Even Unji seemed irritated as she carefully rationed her second nutrient bar of the day. "This is supposed to build character," Minho said, chewing his bar slowly to make it last longer. "Right now it's just building my hatred for whoever designed this test." Ji-ho was quiet. After the rain stopped, he excused himself to check the perimeter. He walked along the beach, gathering pieces of driftwood. He found dry grass growing near the rocks and collected handfuls of it. He spotted a patch of stones that would hold heat well. When he returned to camp, Suri gave him a curious look. "What are you doing?" "Just preparing," Ji-ho said. "Preparing for what?" He smiled. "You'll see." Day 3 arrived with better weather but worse attitudes. The constant hunger was getting to everyone. Arguments broke out over small things. Who used too much water? Whose tent was too close to whose? Whether they should explore the island or stay near the camp. Rickson mocked the humans openly now. "Look at them," he said to the other Velkari cadets. "Weak and complaining. This is easy compared to real military operations. But Jiho noticed that Rixon looked just as miserable as everyone else. The Velkari just hid it better behind pride and insults. That afternoon, Jiho disappeared into the forest. Hunji noticed first. "Where's Jiho?" she asked. "Probably off doing something weird again," Minho said. "He's been collecting sticks and rocks all morning." "That's not protocol," Yunji frowned. "We're supposed to stay together." But Jiho returned before sunset, his arms full of strange materials. Straight branches, vines, large leaves. He sat by himself and began working, weaving the vines into something that looked like a basket. Hyun watched him with interest. "What are you making?" "A fish trap," Jiho replied. "Want to help?" Together they built several simple traps using techniques that were thousands of years old on Earth. They placed them in the stream where the water flowed fastest. Within an hour, the first fish swam into the trap and couldn't find its way out. By evening, they had caught 7 fish. Jiho held them up with a grin. "Dinner." "We can't eat those," Yunji said immediately. "We're supposed to survive on the rations. That's the test." "The test is survival," Jiho countered. "These fish will help us survive better. Besides, we're not wasting the rations. We're supplementing them." The fish flopped in his hands. They were silver and fat, probably delicious. Every cadet in the camp stared at them with hungry eyes. "We still can't cook them," Yunji insisted. "No fires except for emergencies." Commander Thexel was very clear. Jiho set the fish down carefully in a container of water to keep them fresh. "Not yet," he agreed. "But soon." That night, while the others slept fitfully on their half rations, Jiho stayed awake. He continued gathering wood. He arranged stones in a careful circle. He prepared kindling and built a structure that would channel smoke away from the camp. On the command ship orbiting above, Commander Thexal watched the surveillance footage with confusion. What was the human doing? Why was he wasting energy on pointless tasks? The other cadets were conserving their strength, following protocol exactly as taught. This human, Jiho Kim, was behaving strangely, inefficiently, like he didn't understand the purpose of the exercise at all. Thexal made a note in his report. "Human cadet showing poor judgment. Possible disciplinary action required." But he didn't intervene. Not yet. He wanted to see how this played out. Back on the island, Jiho finally allowed himself to sleep. Tomorrow, he thought, everything would change. Tomorrow, he would show them what humans had learned during millions of years of survival on Earth. Tomorrow, he would introduce them to the barbecue. Morning came with mist rolling off the ocean. The camp woke slowly, everyone stiff and hungry. Jiho was already awake. He had been up before dawn, working on something near the beach. By the time the others emerged from their tents, he had built a strange structure from driftwood and stone. "What is that?" Mio asked, rubbing sleep from his eyes. "You'll see," Jiho said. He was in a good mood despite having slept only a few hours. His hands were dirty from working with wood and rope, but his eyes were bright with purpose. Unji approached and studied his construction with a critical eye. It looked like a frame made from sturdy branches held together with vine rope. Flat stones were arranged in a circle beneath it. "This looks like a fire pit," she said slowly, "with some kind of cooking frame." "Smart guess," Jiho replied. "We can't have fires," Yunji reminded him. Again. Commander Thexal specifically said, "He said no fires except for emergencies," Jiho interrupted gently. "He didn't say we couldn't prepare for emergencies." It was a weak argument and everyone knew it. But no one reported him. The truth was that everyone was getting desperate. 4 days of nutrient bars had worn down their spirits. The alien cadets especially were suffering. Most of their species had never experienced real hunger before. Food was always plentiful in their civilizations, either grown in labs or synthesized from raw materials. Humans remembered hunger in their bones. Their ancestors had survived ice ages and droughts, famines, and failed harvests. The memory of it was written into their culture, their stories, their very DNA. Rixon walked past Jiho's fire pit and snorted. "Building toys instead of training. This is why humans shouldn't be in the military." "At least he's doing something," Suri shot back. "All you've done is complain for 4 days straight." Rixon's scales darkened with anger, but he said nothing. He was too tired to argue properly. The hunger was affecting him too, though he'd never admit it. Grand was sitting by the stream, moving slowly. The big thorac needed more calories than most species, and the rations were barely keeping him functional. "I don't understand," he said in his clicking, chirping voice. "Why make this so hard? In real combat, we have supply lines. Support ships. This makes no sense. It's about mental strength, Polara said. The Lumineth didn't need to eat as often as organic species, but even she was dimmer than usual. Her crystalline body wasn't catching the light the way it should. They want to see who breaks. Well, I'm about to break, Hyun muttered. He was sitting with his back against a tree, looking miserable. I keep dreaming about food. Real food my mom's cooking, stews and rice and kimchi and grilled meat. Stop, Minho groaned. You're making it worse. But Jiho was listening carefully. What's your favorite meal? He asked Hyun. Samgyeopsal, Hyun said immediately. Pork belly on a grill with lettuce wraps and samjang, and he stopped himself. Why are you asking? It's torture to think about it. Just curious, Jiho said, but he was filing the information away. He was planning something. The rest of day 4 passed like the others. The cadets completed their assigned tasks, checking the perimeter, maintaining their equipment, practicing survival drills. But everyone moved slower now. The energy was draining from the group. That afternoon, Jiho asked Suri to help him with something. Together, they went to the stream where the fish traps had been set. They had caught more fish overnight. Big ones this time, with silver scales that shone in the sunlight. These are beautiful, Suri said, carefully removing them from the trap. And delicious, I bet, Jiho added. He showed her how to prepare them, removing the guts and scales using a sharp piece of flint he had shaped. It was messy work, but Suri learned quickly. They also set snares in the forest, simple traps made from bent branches and vine rope. Jiho's grandfather had taught him these techniques when he was young, during camping trips in the mountains of Korea. Back then, it had seemed like old-fashioned knowledge, useless in the modern world. Here on this island, it was everything. By evening, they had caught 2 birds. They were plump and well-fed, probably some kind of island species that had never learned to fear predators. Jiho felt a little guilty, but survival was survival. What are you planning? Suri asked as they carried their catch back to camp. I'm planning to remind everyone what it means to be human, Jiho said. The other cadets stared when they saw the birds and fish. Fresh meat. Real actual food, not the gray, tasteless bars they had been choking down. Where did you get those? Rickson demanded. The island provided, Jiho said simply. He laid the food out carefully, arranging it near his prepared fire pit. Yoonji approached with her arms crossed. We need to talk about this. You're breaking protocol. The protocol says survive, Jiho replied. I'm surviving. We're all surviving, but we could be thriving. There's a difference between surviving and being comfortable, Yoonji insisted. This is a military test, not a camping trip. Why can't it be both? Jiho asked. Why does suffering have to be the point? Yoonji didn't have an answer for that. She had been raised on the idea that discipline meant discomfort, that a good soldier endured without complaint. But looking at the fresh food, smelling the potential of it, she felt her resolve weakening. Tomorrow, Jiho announced to the group. Tomorrow evening I'm going to cook this, and everyone is invited to share. You can't, Yoonji said weakly. Watch me, Jiho replied with a smile. That night the camp was quiet, but the air felt different. There was anticipation now, a sense of something about to change. Even the alien cadets who didn't fully understand what Jiho was planning felt it. Minho lay in his tent, unable to sleep. You really think they'll let you do this? He whispered to Jiho. They can try to stop me, Jiho whispered back. But I'm going to do it anyway. We followed their rules for 4 days. We've proven we can endure. Now I'm going to prove we can adapt. What if they fail you? Then I fail knowing I kept my team fed and strong, Jiho said. That seems like decent leadership to me. On the command ship, Commander Thexal was reviewing the surveillance footage again. The human had gathered food, prepared tools, built what was clearly a cooking station. It was bizarre behavior for a military cadet, or was it? Thexal pulled up the performance data for Jiho's group. Despite the strange activities, they had completed all their assigned tasks. Their physical performance scores were actually higher than the other groups. Their psychological evaluations showed better morale. Even the alien cadets in Jiho's area seemed more stable than cadets in other parts of the island. Interesting, Thexal muttered. He made another note. Human Cadet Kim showing unconventional approach. Results? Unexpectedly positive. Continue observation. Back on the island, day 5 began with perfect weather. Clear blue sky, warm sun, gentle breeze. It was as if the universe itself was cooperating with Jiho's plan. He spent the morning gathering herbs from the forest. He found wild garlic, something that tasted like pepper, and leaves that had a citrus smell. He collected salt from evaporated tidal pools. These were flavors, seasonings, the kinds of things that humans had been using for tens of thousands of years. The other cadets watched him work. They didn't understand yet, but they were curious. Even Rickson found himself wandering over to see what the human was doing. "Why do you need all that?" Rickson asked, trying to sound disdainful but mostly sounding interested. "Because food isn't just fuel," Jiho explained. "It's culture. It's comfort. It's how humans connect with each other." "That's soft thinking," Rickson said, but he didn't walk away. As the sun began to set, Jiho made his move. He took his prepared tinder, his carefully arranged kindling, and began the process of making fire. He used the friction method, spinning a stick against a flat piece of wood until smoke appeared, then carefully blowing on the ember until it caught. The aliens watched in amazement. Most of them had never seen fire started without electronic ignition. To them, it was almost like magic. The ember became a flame. The flame caught the kindling. Soon a proper fire was burning in Jiho's stone circle, crackling and warm and absolutely beautiful. "Here we go," Jiho said with satisfaction. He placed his makeshift grill over the flames. It was time to cook. The fire crackled and popped as Jiho placed the first fish on his makeshift grill. The metal frame he had built from branches held steady over the flames. Within seconds, the smell began to spread. It was unlike anything the alien cadets had ever experienced. Grond, the massive thorax, stopped in the middle of repairing his shelter. His antennae twitched wildly. "What is that smell?" he asked in his clicking voice. He sounded almost frightened. "That's cooking," Minho said. He had moved closer to the fire, drawn by memories of home. "That's the smell of food becoming delicious." The fish skin started to crisp. Fat dripped onto the hot stones below, sizzling and smoking. Jiho had rubbed the fish with the wild herbs he had collected, and now those herbs were releasing their oils into the air. The scent of garlic mixed with smoke, the tang of citrus leaves, the rich smell of protein transforming under heat. Polara drifted closer. As a crystalline being, she didn't eat in the traditional sense, but even she seemed affected. "The molecular changes from the heat are creating complex aromatic compounds," she observed. "I can detect them in the air. They're very stimulating." "That's one way to put it," Suri said. She was sitting near Jiho, watching him work with complete focus. "I'd say it smells amazing." More cadets began to gather. They couldn't help themselves. The smell was magnetic, pulling them toward the fire whether they wanted to come or not. Even Rickson appeared at the edge of the firelight, trying to look disinterested but failing completely. Jiho turned the fish carefully. The other side began to cook, the skin turning golden brown. He added the birds to the grill, placing them on the cooler edges so they would cook slower. The birds had been butterflied and seasoned with salt and the pepper-like plant he had found. "This is against regulations," Yunji said, but her voice was weak. She was standing with the group now, and her eyes were fixed on the cooking meat. Her stomach growled loudly enough for everyone to hear. "Regulations are for typical situations," Jiho replied, flipping a bird. "This is an adaptive solution to a survival scenario. That's what humans do. We adapt. Your species does this regularly?" Grond asked. He had moved even closer, his large eyes reflecting the firelight. "You transform your food with fire?" "For hundreds of thousands of years," Jiho confirmed. "Some scientists think learning to cook is what made us smart. The heat breaks down the food, makes it easier to digest. Our bodies get more energy from cooked food than raw. It means our brains could grow bigger." "Fascinating," Polara said. "Most species in the galaxy discovered fire but never thought to use it for food preparation. We move straight to technological solutions." "You missed out," Minho said. He was practically drooling. The fish was ready. Jiho carefully removed it from the grill and placed it on one of the large leaves he had collected. The skin was perfectly crispy. The meat inside was white and flaky, steaming in the cool evening air. He broke off a piece and tasted it. Perfectly cooked. The herbs had infused into the flesh. The salt brought out the natural flavors. It was simple food, but after 4 days of nutrient bars, it tasted like heaven. "Okay," Jiho announced. "Everyone who wants to eat, come and get it." There was a moment of hesitation. Then Hyun moved forward quickly, almost running. I'm in. I don't care about regulations. I'm so hungry. Jiho handed him a piece of fish on a leaf. Hyun took a bite and his eyes went wide. Oh my God, he whispered. I forgot food could taste like this. That broke the dam. Suri came forward, then Minho. Even Unji, after struggling with herself for a long moment, accepted a portion. This is probably a mistake, she muttered. Then she tasted it and made a small sound of pleasure. But it's a delicious mistake. The alien cadets were more cautious. Grand approached slowly, his multiple legs moving carefully. Is it safe for my biology? He asked. Should be, Jiho said. Fish is just protein and fat. Your species eats protein cubes, right? This is the same basic nutrients, just prepared differently. Grand accepted a small piece. He brought it to his mandibles and tasted it carefully. For a moment, nothing happened. Then his whole body seemed to shiver. This is flavor, he said in wonder. Real, actual flavor. Our food cubes have nutrition but no taste. I didn't know food could be like this. Word spread quickly. More cadets appeared from other parts of the camp. Species Jiho didn't even know approached the fire, drawn by the smell and the sight of others eating. A Velkari cadet named Torin came forward cautiously. May I try? He asked, much more politely than Rixon ever spoke. Of course, Jiho said, offering a piece of the cooked bird. There's plenty for everyone. Torin tasted it and his scales rippled with color. This is remarkable. Our people believe that warriors should eat only for function, not pleasure. But this makes me feel stronger somehow. That's because you're actually enjoying it, Suri explained. Happiness is fuel too, not just calories. The fire became the center of everything. Cadets sat in a circle around it, eating and talking. Species that had barely spoken to each other for 5 days were now sharing food and stories. Jiho kept cooking, using every fish and both birds. He made sure everyone got at least one good portion. Even the cadets who couldn't eat the food seemed affected. Polara sat near the fire, absorbing its warmth. This is pleasant, she said. We Lumineth don't have a tradition of gathering like this. We usually stay separate, recharging in isolation. But this feeling of community is nice. Humans are social creatures, Jiho explained as he worked. We survived because we worked together. Sharing food is part of that. It's how we bond. Rixon finally approached. He had been watching from a distance, too proud to join at first. But the smell and the sight of everyone eating had worn down his resistance. I suppose I could try a small piece, he said, trying to sound like he was doing Jiho a favor. Jiho handed him the best piece he had saved. Perfectly cooked, seasoned just right. Enjoy, he said simply. Rixon ate it standing up, refusing to sit with the group. But Jiho watched his expression change. The initial bite, cautious and suspicious, then the realization of how good it was, then the internal struggle as Rixon tried not to show how much he was enjoying it. It's adequate, Rixon finally said, which, from someone as proud as him, was practically a love letter. The evening continued. The fire burned down to coals. Someone started telling a story about their home planet. Someone else shared a joke. Laughter echoed across the beach, real laughter, not the forced kind from earlier in the week. Hyun was smiling for the first time since they had arrived. Thank you, he said to Jiho. I was really struggling. This helped more than you know. We're a team, Jiho replied. Teams take care of each other. High above the island on the command ship, Commander Thexal watched the scene on his monitor. His expression was unreadable, but his tail was twitching, which for a Velkari meant deep thought. His second-in-command, a young officer named Prex, stood beside him. Should we stop this? Prex asked. It's clearly a violation of the survival exercise parameters. Thexal didn't answer immediately. He was watching the cadets around the fire, their body language, their energy levels, their interactions. Pull up the performance data, he finally said. Prex brought up the holographic displays. Charts and graphs filled the air, showing various metrics for all the cadet groups scattered across the planet. Jiho's group was outperforming every other team. Their physical condition scores were the highest. Their psychological evaluations showed the strongest morale. They had completed every required task and several bonus objectives that other groups had ignored. This doesn't make sense, Prex said. They wasted energy on non-essential activities. They should be weaker. But they're not, Thexal observed. They're stronger. Why? The human, Prex said, pointing at Jiho on the screen. He changed the dynamic somehow. Thexal watched Jiho working the fire, distributing food, making sure everyone had enough. It wasn't the behavior of a typical cadet. Most would focus on their own survival first. But this human seemed to believe that making everyone stronger made him stronger too. It was a strange philosophy, but the results were undeniable. "Continue monitoring," Thexal ordered. "I want to see how this develops." Back on the island, the fire finally died down. Bellies were full for the first time in days. The cadets were relaxed, talking quietly, some already heading to their tents for the first truly restful sleep of the exercise. Yunji approached Jiho as he cleaned up. "That was incredible," she admitted. "I was wrong to doubt you." "You were following protocol," Jiho said. "That's not wrong. But sometimes protocol needs to bend a little." "Still," Yunji said, "you took a risk. For all of us. That's good leadership," Jiho shrugged. "I just didn't want to be hungry anymore, and I figured everyone else felt the same way." As the camp settled down for the night, there was a different feeling in the air. Hope, energy, connection. The exercise wasn't over yet, but somehow it felt like they had already won something important. They had remembered what it meant to be more than just surviving. They had remembered what it meant to live. The shuttle appeared in the morning sky like an angry wasp. Its engine screamed as it descended toward the beach, kicking up sand and scattering the carefully built shelters. The cadets scrambled out of their tents, confused and alarmed. They weren't supposed to be extracted for another 2 days. Commander Thexal stepped out of the shuttle before it had fully landed. His scales were dark with anger, his tail lashing behind him. Behind him came 3 other instructors, all looking stern and official. "Line up!" Thexal roared. "Now!" The cadets assembled quickly, falling into formation with military precision. Jiho stood in the line with the others, his face calm but his heart pounding. He knew why they were here. Thexal walked slowly down the line, examining each cadet. When he reached Jiho, he stopped. "Cadet Kim," he said, his voice cold as space. "Step forward." Jiho stepped out of line and stood at attention. "Yes, sir." "You started a fire," Thexal said. "An unauthorized fire. You wasted time and energy on activities not related to the survival objectives. You encouraged other cadets to violate protocols." He paused. "Do you deny any of this?" "No, sir," Jiho replied. "I did all of those things. And you understand that these actions constitute serious violations of Academy regulations?" "I understand that they could be seen that way, sir." Thexal's eyes narrowed. "Could be seen that way? There's no ambiguity here, cadet. You broke the rules. You failed to follow direct orders." Yunji suddenly stepped forward. "Sir, if I may speak?" Thexal turned to her. "Cadet Yunji, back in line." "With respect, sir, I believe Cadet Kim's actions were justified." Yunji's voice was steady, though Jiho could tell she was nervous. "The objective was survival. We survived. In fact, we excelled." "The objective was to follow orders," Thexal corrected her. "Discipline is the foundation of military service. But so is adaptability," Minho added, also stepping forward. "Humans are taught to adapt to our environment. That's what Jiho did. He adapted." "Get back in line, both of you," Thexal ordered. But more cadets were moving now. Suri stepped forward. Then Hyun. Even some of the alien cadets broke formation. Grand, the massive Thurak, moved his bulk out of line. "Commander, I was ready to quit before Cadet Kim shared his food. I had decided I would fail this test, but his actions gave me strength to continue. How is that a failure of leadership?" Torin, the polite Velkari, also spoke up. "Sir, I've been in the academy for 3 years. I've never seen cadets from different species work together the way we did last night. That human created unity where there was only division." Thexal looked around at the gathering crowd of cadets. His tail had stopped lashing, though his expression remained stern. "So you all think breaking regulations is acceptable if the results are positive?" "I think," Polara said carefully, her crystalline voice chiming like bells, that Cadet Kim understood something important. The survival exercise wasn't just about enduring hardship. It was about maintaining effectiveness as a unit. By improving morale and energy levels, he ensured our team remained combat ready. Isn't that the true objective? Thexal was silent for a long moment. He turned back to Jiho. Cadet Kim, explain your reasoning. Why did you do this? Jiho took a breath. Sir, I followed the spirit of the orders, not just the letter. The goal was to survive for 7 days. We did that. But humans learned long ago that survival isn't just about staying alive. It's about maintaining the will to keep going. Morale is a resource just like water or shelter. I manage that resource. By cooking fish on a barbecue, Thexal said flatly. By remembering that we're not machines, sir. We're living beings. We need more than just fuel. We need comfort, community, hope. Those things make us better soldiers, not worse ones. And you think you know better than thousands of years of military tradition? Thexal challenged. No, sir, Jiho replied. But I think humans bring a different perspective. We survived on a dangerous planet for millions of years. Not because we were the strongest or the fastest, because we were the most adaptable, because we took care of each other. That's in our nature. Thexal stared at him for a long time. The beach was silent except for the sound of waves and the cooling engines of the shuttle. Finally, the commander turned to one of the other instructors. Show me their performance metrics. The instructor pulled up a holographic display. Data filled the air, showing comparisons between all the cadet groups on the planet. Charts and numbers and analysis reports. Jiho's group had the highest scores in every category. Physical performance, psychological stability, task completion, team cohesion. They were outperforming groups that had followed every regulation perfectly. This group completed all primary objectives 12 hours ahead of schedule, the instructor reported. They also completed 3 bonus objectives that most other groups didn't even attempt. Medical scans show they're in better physical condition now than when they started. And psychological profiles indicate high morale and strong unit bonds. Thexal studied the data carefully. His tail twitched again. That sign of deep thought. Other groups are struggling, the instructor continued. We've had 2 medical evacuations for malnutrition-induced weakness. 1 cadet had a mental breakdown. Several groups are barely speaking to each other. The constant hunger and discomfort have broken down team cooperation. But not this group, Thexal said quietly. No, sir, not this group. Thexal turned back to face the assembled cadets. I came here expecting to discipline a rule breaker, he said. What I found instead is a leader who understands something my people have forgotten. He walked to Jiho and stood directly in front of him. Cadet Kim, what you did was technically against regulations. But regulations exist to create effective soldiers. And the data shows that your methods created a more effective unit than any other on this planet. Jiho remained at attention, not sure if this was praise or punishment. My species, the Velkari, believes that hardship creates strength, Thexal continued. We think suffering is necessary for growth, and perhaps it is. But you humans seem to believe that comfort and strength can coexist. That caring for your team doesn't make you weak. He paused. The evidence suggests you might be right. A murmur ran through the cadets. Even the other instructors looked surprised. This is difficult for me to admit, Thexal said. I've taught survival courses for 20 years. I've trained thousands of cadets. I believed I knew the best way. But you've shown me something new. He looked around at all the cadets, not just the humans. What happened here last night wasn't just about food. It was about leadership. Cadet Kim saw his team suffering and found a solution. He took a risk. He challenged tradition, and he made everyone stronger for it. Thexal stepped back and addressed the whole group. This exercise is officially concluded. You've all passed. But more than that, you've taught me something valuable. The galaxy is full of different species, different perspectives, different approaches. We're stronger when we learn from each other. He turned specifically to Jiho. Cadet Kim, your actions will be noted in your file. Not as a disciplinary matter, but as a commendation for innovative leadership. Jiho's eyes widened. Sir? You thought outside the traditional framework and achieved superior results. That's exactly what we need in the galactic military. Officers who can adapt, who can find solutions in unexpected places. who can unite diverse teams. Thexal's stern face softened slightly. Your people call it thinking outside the box, I believe? Yes, sir, Jiho said, unable to keep the smile off his face. Then continue thinking outside the box, cadet. The military needs more of that. The tension broke. Cadets began to relax, some even smiling. Minho clapped Jiho on the shoulder. Yunji looked relieved. Hyun was grinning from ear to ear. All cadets, prepare for extraction, Thexal ordered. We'll return to the academy for debriefing. And Cadet Kim, I want a full report on your techniques. We're going to review the survival training program. It may need some adjustments. As the cadets packed up their gear, there was excitement in the air. They had not only passed the test, but changed it. They had proven that there was more than one way to survive. Rickson approached Jiho as they loaded their packs. The proud Velkari looked uncomfortable, like he was about to do something difficult. That was impressive, Rickson finally said. What you did, I still think humans are too soft for military service. But perhaps there's value in that softness. Sometimes. It was the closest thing to an apology Jiho was likely to get. He accepted it with a nod. We all have our strengths. Maybe we can learn from each other. Rickson grunted and walked away, but there was no hostility in it anymore. As the shuttle lifted off the island, Jiho looked out the window at the beach where they had camped. The fire pit was still there, a circle of stones that would probably remain for years. A small monument to the idea that taking care of each other wasn't weakness. It was the strongest thing you could do. 6 months had passed since the island. The Galactic Military Academy looked the same as always, but something had changed in the way cadets talked about survival training. The story of the human who cooked a barbecue during the test had spread through every class, every species, every corner of the academy. Jiho walked through the main hall with his datapad, reviewing the day's schedule. He was no longer just a cadet. He now had an additional title, Assistant Survival Training Instructor. It was unusual for someone who hadn't even graduated yet, but Commander Thexal had insisted. You changed how we think about survival, the commander had told him. Now help me change how we teach it. The project had started small. Jiho worked with Yunji and Suri to write a proposal for updating the survival curriculum. They called it Adaptive Survival Techniques, and it focused on more than just endurance. It taught improvisation, resource enhancement, and team morale management. The academy administration had been skeptical at first. Military training had been done the same way for centuries. Why change now? But the data from the island exercise was impossible to ignore. Jiho's group had outperformed everyone else, and the reason was clear. They had been happier, healthier, and more united. Today was the first day of the new program. Jiho entered the training room where 30 new cadets waited. They represented 12 different species, all looking nervous about what was to come. Some had heard the stories about the barbecue. Others had no idea what to expect. Commander Thexal stood at the front of the room. Cadets, attention, he called. The room snapped to order. Today begins a new approach to survival training. You'll learn the traditional methods, yes. How to ration food, how to build shelter, how to endure hardship. But you'll also learn something else. He gestured to Jiho. Cadet Kim will demonstrate what we call active adaptation. The difference between merely surviving and actually thriving in difficult conditions. Jiho stepped forward. He felt nervous but tried not to show it. Most species in the galaxy think of survival as deprivation, he began. You reduce your needs, minimize your presence, and wait for rescue. That works, but it has a cost. It drains your spirit. It makes you weaker over time. He pulled up a holographic display showing various survival scenarios. Humans learned a different approach. We don't just endure our environment, we improve it. Small changes that make a big difference. Better shelter, better food, better morale. These things don't waste resources, they multiply them. A Thurak cadet raised one of his 6 arms. How can comfort multiply resources? That makes no logical sense. Because a comfortable soldier is an effective soldier, Jiho explained. If you're cold, miserable, and hungry, you make mistakes, you move slower, you think less clearly. But if you're warm, fed, and in good spirits, you perform better. You complete tasks faster, which saves time and energy. Over the next few hours, Jiho taught the class basic techniques. How to improve a standard shelter using local materials. How to identify edible plants. How to make fire without technology. How to preserve food. How to cook using minimal equipment. The alien cadets were fascinated. Most had never considered these things. Their societies had advanced past the need for such primitive skills. But watching Jiho work, they began to understand the value. On a modern ship, you have synthesizers and environmental controls, Jiho told them. But ships fail. Systems break. You crash on a planet with no support. That's when these skills matter. That's when knowing how to turn a hostile environment into a livable one saves lives. A Lumineth cadet who didn't need to eat still paid close attention. This is about more than just food, isn't it? She asked. Exactly, Jiho confirmed. It's about mindset. It's about refusing to be a victim of your circumstances. Humans survived ice ages and droughts and famines because we never accepted that things had to stay bad. We always asked, how can we make this better? The classes continued over the following weeks. Word spread quickly. Cadets from other groups started attending, curious about the human techniques. The training room grew more crowded each session. Suri taught a class on improvised tools and weapons. Minho demonstrated efficient hunting and fishing methods. Even Yunji, who had initially resisted the whole idea, now taught a course on balancing regulations with practical adaptation. The most surprising development came from the alien instructors. They began sharing their own species' survival knowledge. The Velkari had techniques for water conservation in desert environments. The Thurak knew how to build incredibly strong structures from minimal materials. The Lumineth could navigate by reading energy patterns invisible to other species. What started as a human innovation became a cross-species exchange. Everyone had something to teach. Everyone had something to learn. 3 months into the new program, Commander Thexal called Jiho to his office. "Sit down, cadet," he said, gesturing to a chair. Jiho sat, wondering if something was wrong. "I've been reviewing the results of your training program," Thexal said. "Graduation rates are up. Performance scores are higher. Medical incidents during field training have dropped by 40%. And most interesting, we're seeing much better cooperation between species." "That's good news, sir," Jiho said cautiously. "It's excellent news. So excellent that the Galactic Military Command wants to implement your program across all training facilities. Every academy, every boot camp, every survival course in the entire military." Jiho's eyes widened. "Sir, I'm just a cadet. I'm not qualified to—" "You're qualified by results," Thexal interrupted. "You saw a problem, found a solution, and proved it works. That's all the qualification you need." He paused. "There's more. They want you to lead the implementation. After you graduate, of course, you'll have the rank of junior instructor and travel to different facilities, teaching other instructors your methods." "I don't know what to say, sir." "Say yes," Thexal advised. "The galaxy needs this, Cadet Kim. We've been doing things the same way for too long. Your people bring a new perspective that makes all of us stronger." Jiho thought about the island, about the fire and the food and the way everyone had come together, about Hyun's smile and Gron's wonder and even Rixon's grudging respect. "Yes, sir," he said. "I'll do it." Graduation day arrived with ceremony and celebration. The academy grounds were filled with families and friends from across the galaxy. Jiho's parents had traveled from Earth, and his mother cried when she saw him in his dress uniform. The graduates stood in formation as their names were called. When Jiho stepped forward to receive his commission, the applause was louder than usual. His classmates cheered. Even some of the instructors clapped. Commander Thexal personally handed him the insignia. "Well done, Instructor Kim," he said quietly. "You've changed more than you know." At the reception afterward, Jiho was surrounded by well-wishers. Cadets wanted to hear stories about the island. Instructors wanted to discuss the new training program. His friends from the survival exercise all gathered together, laughing and reminiscing. "Remember when we thought we'd have to eat nutrient bars for a week?" Minho said, making everyone groan. "Remember when Rixon tried to pretend the fish wasn't delicious?" Suri added, and even Rickson, who was standing nearby, smiled slightly. I still maintain it was only adequate, Rickson said, but there was humor in his voice now. Hyun raised his glass. To Jiho, he said, for reminding us that we're not just soldiers, we're people, and people take care of each other. Everyone drank to that. Later, as the celebration wound down, Yoonji found Jiho standing alone on a balcony, looking out at the stars. Thinking about the future? She asked. Thinking about the past, Jiho replied. About my grandfather teaching me to fish and cook over a fire. He said those skills were important, that I shouldn't forget them just because we have modern technology. I didn't really understand then. I thought they were just fun camping tricks. But they were more than that, Yoonji said. Yeah, they were wisdom, knowledge passed down through generations, the kind of knowledge that says, no matter how advanced we become, we're still the same creatures who survived by adapting and helping each other. He looked at her. That's what I want to teach, not just survival skills, but the philosophy behind them. You will, Yoonji said confidently. You already are. Years passed. Instructor Kim became a familiar name throughout the galactic military. His training programs were implemented across hundreds of worlds. Thousands of soldiers learned not just to survive, but to thrive in harsh conditions. The changes were subtle, but significant. Survival exercises became less about punishment and more about problem solving. Teams bonded over shared meals instead of shared misery. Species that had never worked well together found common ground. During a joint military operation on a frozen world, when supply lines were cut and food ran low, a young officer remembered her training. What would Instructor Kim do? She asked her squad. They built fires. They hunted local game. They made soup from available plants. They turned a potential disaster into a manageable situation. And most importantly, they did it together, human and alien working side by side. Back on Earth, in a small village in Korea, an old man heard stories about his grandson, about how techniques learned in mountain streams and forest camps had changed military training across the galaxy.